Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. The rain fell in torrents across Seattle's empty streets, each drop echoing the tears Ethan Carter had shed for 40 consecutive days. 40 days since the phone call that shattered his world beyond repair. 40 days since Lily's laughter had filled their penthouse. 40 days since he'd last felt his unborn son Noah's kicks against his palm through Lily's swollen belly. Ethan pulled his charcoal wool coat tighter around his shoulders, though no amount of expensive fabric could warm the Arctic wasteland that had taken residence in his chest. The rain soaked through his Italian leather shoes, but he welcomed the discomfort. Physical pain was easier to bear than the emotional devastation that threatened to consume him with every breath. At 35, Ethan Carter commanded a tech empire. His company had revolutionized cloud computing, making him one of Seattle's youngest billionaires. He'd possessed everything: success, wealth, respect, and, most precious of all, Lily Beautiful. Compassionate Lily, with her honey, gold hair and champagne sparkle eyes. Lily, who'd convinced him love at first sight existed when she'd crashed into him at a coffee shop 3 years prior, her nursing textbooks scattering across the floor as she rushed to her pediatric rotation. But wealth meant nothing when you couldn't buy back the dead. Success felt hollow when there was no one to share it with. And love felt like a curse when it left you this empty. Ethan's feet carried him through the familiar maze of downtown streets he'd walked every night since the funeral. He couldn't bear to stay in their home, surrounded by baby furniture they'd assembled together, tiny clothes Lily had folded with such tenderness, the nursery painted soft yellow because they'd wanted to be surprised. Everything there whispered of what would never be. The rain intensified, hammering against the pavement like nature's own grief. Ethan welcomed it, tilting his face toward the sky and letting it wash over him. Maybe if he stood here long enough, the rain would dissolve him completely, and this unbearable aching would finally end. That's when he heard it. A sound so soft it almost blended with the rainfall, humming a gentle, melodic tune that seemed to wrap around his heart and squeeze. Ethan stopped walking, his breath catching as he turned toward the source. There, sheltered beneath the broken awning of a closed pharmacy, sat the most breathtaking woman he'd encountered since Lily. Her rich ebony skin seemed to glow despite the dim streetlight, raindrops catching the illumination like diamonds across her sculpted cheekbones. Her hair was secured in a simple bun, rebellious curls framing her face, and her eyes, Lord, her eyes held the deepest brown he'd ever witnessed, brimming with a pain he recognized from his own mirror. But it wasn't her beauty that stopped Ethan's heart. It was what she held in her arms, 2 babies, identical twins who appeared to be around 10 months old, wrapped in thin blankets that were doing little to keep them dry. The woman, who couldn't have been older than 28, was trying to shield them with her own body, her lips moving in what Ethan realized was a lullaby in Spanish. Her voice was honey and heartbreak combined, a sound that reached into his chest and grabbed hold of something he thought had died with Lily. "Por favor," she whispered to the few passers-by who hurried past without stopping, her voice barely audible above the rain. "Please, I just need enough for formula, my babies." Her English carried the musical cadence of her native language, each word carefully chosen, practiced. Ethan's feet moved before his mind could catch up. He found himself standing directly in front of her, close enough to see the exhaustion etched in every line of her face, the way her hands shook slightly as she held her children, close enough to see that she was trying so hard to be strong, even as her world was clearly falling apart. Their eyes met, and Ethan felt something shift in the universe. This woman's pain was different from his, born of abandonment rather than loss, of poverty rather than grief, but it was pain nonetheless. And in that moment, looking into those beautiful brown eyes, Ethan saw something he hadn't seen in 40 days. "Hope." "Ma'am," he said softly, crouching down so he was at her level, the rain soaking through his pants. But he didn't care. "What are their names?" She blinked in surprise, clearly not expecting this question from yet another stranger. "Diego and Lucas," she whispered, adjusting the blankets around the sleeping babies. "They're 10 months old." "They're beautiful," Ethan said, and meant it. The babies were gorgeous, with their mother's rich skin tone and perfectly formed features. One was slightly smaller than the other, but both looked healthy despite their circumstances. Where's their father? Pain flashed across the woman's face, and she looked away. Gone. When he found out they weren't his biological children, he left us 3 weeks ago. Took everything. I've been staying in shelters, but they're full now, and I can't. Her voice broke, and she pressed her lips together, clearly fighting tears. Ethan's heart shattered and reformed in the space of a heartbeat. Here was a woman who'd been abandoned, betrayed, left to care for 2 babies alone. Here was a mother's love, so fierce she'd sit in the rain and beg rather than let her children go hungry. Here was everything he'd lost and everything he'd dreamed of having with Lily. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Isabel," she whispered. "Isabel Morales." Isabel. Ethan tasted her name on his tongue, found it sweet. "I'm Ethan, Ethan Carter." He watched recognition flicker in her eyes. His name was well known in Seattle, but she didn't change her posture, didn't suddenly become deferential or calculating. She just kept looking at him with those incredible eyes, waiting. Ethan's mind was racing, his heart pounding with an intensity he hadn't felt since before the accident. An insane idea was forming, born of grief and loneliness and something that felt suspiciously like fate. Lily had always believed in signs, in the universe putting people exactly where they needed to be. She'd said that about their own meeting, that they'd crashed into each other because they were meant to. Maybe this was Lily's sign. Maybe she'd sent him exactly what he needed most. "Isabel," Ethan said, his voice stronger now, filled with a certainty that surprised him. "I know this is going to sound crazy. I know you don't know me, but I lost my wife and unborn son 40 days ago, and I've been walking these streets every night since, dying a little more each time." Isabel's eyes widened, her grip tightening protectively on her babies. "I see you here, loving these boys so fiercely, protecting them even when you have nothing left to give, and I see—" Ethan's voice cracked. "I see what I was supposed to have, what I lost, what I still want more than anything in this world." The rain continued to fall around them, creating a curtain that seemed to separate them from the rest of the world. In this moment, there was only Ethan and Isabel and 2 sleeping babies who represented everything he dreamed of. "I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, Ethan continued, his words tumbling out faster now. "I have a home that's too big and too empty. I have love that has nowhere to go, and you have these beautiful children who deserve everything good in this world." Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring knot, Lily's wedding ring, which he'd buried with her, but his own wedding band, simple platinum that had circled his finger for 2 years. Without overthinking it, without analyzing the madness of what he was about to do, Ethan Carter, billionaire CEO, rational businessman, grieving, widower, knelt in the rain in front of this beautiful stranger and her children. "Marry me," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "Let me love you. Let me love them. Let me be the father they need and the husband you deserve. Let me give you everything you need, and let you give me a reason to live again." Isabel stared at him, her mouth slightly open, rain mixing with tears on her cheeks. One of the babies, Diego, or Lucas, Ethan couldn't tell which, stirred in her arms, making a soft sound that went straight to Ethan's heart. "You don't know me," Isabel whispered. But her voice held wonder rather than rejection. "I know enough," Ethan said firmly. "I know you'd rather sit in the rain than see your children go hungry. I know you sing to them in Spanish to keep them calm. I know you've been through hell, and you're still fighting. I know you have the strongest, most beautiful heart I've ever seen." He paused, taking a shaky breath. "And I know that 40 days ago, I wanted to die. But looking at you, at them, I remember what it feels like to want to live." Isabel's tears were falling freely now, her eyes searching his face. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you want this? Want us?" Ethan's own tears mixed with the rain. "Because God, or the universe, or Lily herself put you right here, right now, when I needed you most. Because those babies deserve a father who will love them unconditionally, and I have so much love with nowhere to go. Because maybe, just maybe, we can save each other." Thunder rumbled overhead, and one of the babies woke up, beginning to fuss. Isabel automatically began rocking him, her eyes never leaving Ethan's face. "I don't have anything to offer you," she said quietly. "No money, no family here, nothing but 2 babies who aren't even—" "They're perfect," Ethan interrupted fiercely. "You're perfect. You don't need to offer me anything except the chance to love you all." Isabel looked down at her sons, then back at Ethan, still kneeling in the rain with his ring in his outstretched hand. "Okay," she whispered. So softly Ethan almost didn't hear her over the rain. "Okay." "Yes," he said, stronger now, meeting his eyes with a courage that took his breath away. "Yes, Ethan Carter, I'll marry you." Ethan's heart exploded with joy, relief, and something that felt like redemption. He slipped his wedding ring onto Isabel's finger. It was too big, but it would do for now and then. He was standing, gathering her and the babies into his arms, all of them soaked and crying and laughing at the same time. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair, holding his new family close. "Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for giving me hope again." As Ethan helped Isabel to her feet, supporting her and the babies, he felt something shift inside his chest. The ice that had lived there for 40 days began to crack, and underneath, he felt the first warm flutter of what might eventually become happiness again. They walked through the rain together toward Ethan's car, toward his home, toward a future none of them could have imagined an hour ago. And if Ethan glanced up at the sky and whispered a quiet thank you to Lily, well, that was between him and the rain. Chapter 2. The Yes That Saved Two Souls. The elevator ascended to Ethan's penthouse in contemplative silence, broken only by the gentle breathing of sleeping infants and the quiet dripping of rainwater from their saturated clothes. Isabel pressed herself against the elevator's far wall, Diego and Lucas secure in her arms, struggling to process the evening's surreal turn. An hour earlier, she'd been homeless and desperate. Now she wore a stranger's wedding ring and rode toward the pinnacle of one of Seattle's most exclusive towers. Ethan stood opposite her, his storm-gray eyes never abandoning her face. Even drenched, he remained devastatingly handsome, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled when wet and a jawline speaking of determination and strength. Yet his eyes held her captive. They contained pain so profound it matched her own, and beneath that anguish, something resembling reverence as he observed her with her sons. "Are you having second thoughts?" Ethan asked softly as they reached the 40th floor. Isabel considered the question seriously. Was she insane for agreeing to marry a complete stranger? Probably. But something about Ethan Carter felt right in a way nothing had felt right since Victor had walked out 3 weeks ago, taking their car, their savings, and every shred of security she'd thought she had. "No," she said quietly, surprising herself with how certain she sounded. "Are you?" Ethan's smile was soft and genuine, transforming his entire face. Not even for a second. The elevator opened directly into Ethan's penthouse, and Isabel's breath caught. She'd seen luxury apartments in movies, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Seattle's skyline, and the space was decorated in warm grays and blues that somehow managed to feel both expensive and welcoming. But what struck her most was how empty it felt. Despite the beautiful furniture and carefully chosen art, the space felt hollow, like a museum rather than a home. There were no personal touches, no photographs, no signs that anyone actually lived here. "Welcome home," Ethan said, his voice catching slightly on the last word. Home. When was the last time Isabel had felt like she had a real home? Her grandmother's tiny apartment in Los Angeles had been home until cancer took her when Isabel was 22. The apartment she'd shared with Victor had never felt like home. It had been his place that she was allowed to occupy. But something about the way Ethan said the word, like it was a gift he was offering her, made her chest tighten with emotion. Lucas stirred in her arms, beginning to fuss with the hunger cry she knew meant they needed to eat soon. Diego followed suit moments later, their internal clocks perfectly synchronized as always. "They're hungry," Isabel said, embarrassment coloring her voice. I don't have any formula left." "Of course," Ethan said immediately, springing into action. "What kind do they usually drink?" "I'll have someone bring it up right away." Isabel told him the brand, watching in amazement as Ethan made a phone call that would have cost her 3 hours of walking to various stores. Within 20 minutes, his building's concierge had delivered not just formula but diapers, baby food, bottles, and an entire selection of infant supplies. "I didn't know what size diapers," Ethan explained, looking almost shy, "so I got several different ones." Isabel stared at the pile of supplies that represented more money than she'd had in months. "Ethan, this is too much. I can't." "Yes, you can," he said firmly, moving closer to her. "This is what family does. We take care of each other." Family. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with promise and possibility. "Here, let me help," Ethan said, reaching for Diego. "Which one is which?" "Diego has the small birthmark on his left temple," Isabel said, carefully transferring her son to Ethan's arms. "Lucas is slightly bigger and has the tiny scar on his chin from when he fell off the couch last month." Ethan cradled Diego with surprising natural ease, his large hands gentle and sure. "Hello, Diego," he said softly in Spanish, the pronunciation careful but correct. "Soy tu nuevo papá." Isabel's eyes filled with tears. "You speak Spanish?" "Some," Ethan admitted, beginning to rock Diego instinctively as the baby fussed. "I grew up in San Diego. My housekeeper, Carmen, taught me when I was young. I'm probably rusty." "It was perfect," Isabel whispered, watching this powerful man tenderly soothe her son. Something inside her chest cracked open, a feeling she thought was dead forever stirring to life. They settled into Ethan's spacious kitchen, working together to prepare bottles with an ease that felt like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Ethan held both babies while Isabel mixed the formula, his strong arms managing their weight effortlessly. When Diego began to cry harder, Ethan began humming the same lullaby Isabel had been singing in the rain. "How did you?" "My wife used to hum that tune," Ethan said quietly, his eyes growing distant. "Lily. She was a pediatric nurse. She said all babies responded to that particular melody, regardless of cultural background. Something about the rhythm matching a heartbeat in the womb." The mention of his deceased wife should have created awkwardness, but instead, Isabel felt a strange sense of connection to this woman she'd never met. Lily had loved this man, had been loved by him, and somehow her spirit felt present in this moment, blessing what was happening between them. "Tell me about her," Isabel said as they settled on Ethan's massive couch, each feeding a baby. Ethan's expression softened with love and grief intertwined. She was light, pure light. She became a nurse because she couldn't stand to see children suffer. "We met when she literally crashed into me at a coffee shop. She was running late for her shift and slammed into me so hard she knocked us both down." Isabel smiled, imagining the scene. "Love at first sight?" "The moment I looked into her eyes," Ethan confirmed. "I knew I was going to marry her before I even knew her name." She laughed when I told her that later, said I was either the most romantic man alive or completely insane. "Maybe both," Isabel suggested gently. Ethan's laugh was soft and sad. "She'd like you," he said, meeting Isabel's eyes. "She always said the strongest people were the ones who kept loving despite being hurt. She'd see that strength in you immediately." They sat in comfortable silence, feeding the babies as rain continued to streak the windows. Isabel found herself studying Ethan's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners, the gentle way his lips curved when he looked at Diego. This man had just proposed to a complete stranger in the rain, and yet he seemed like the most genuine person she'd ever met. "Why me?" she asked suddenly. "Really? You could have anyone. You could have helped me in a dozen different ways without marrying me. Why did you ask me to be your wife?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his attention seemingly focused on Lucas, who was drinking his bottle with determined concentration. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. "Because when I looked at you tonight, I saw what I'd lost," he said quietly. "Not just Lily and Noah, but the dream of family, of coming home to people who love you, of having little voices calling you daddy and tiny hands reaching for you when they're scared." He paused, shifting Lucas to his shoulder to burp him with practiced ease that surprised Isabel. "But more than that," Ethan continued, "I saw what I was supposed to become. Lily and we talked about adopting someday. She always said love wasn't about biology. It was about choice. Every day, you choose to love someone. When I saw you protecting Diego and Lucas, willing to sacrifice everything for them, I knew you understood that kind of love." Isabel felt tears prick her eyes. "They're not even my biological children," she admitted quietly. I was Victor's girlfriend when his ex-girlfriend abandoned them on his doorstep. She'd been doing drugs while pregnant, and they were so small, so fragile. Victor wanted to give them up for adoption immediately, but I couldn't let them go. You became their mother the moment you chose them, Ethan said firmly. Biology doesn't make family, love does. Lucas had fallen asleep against Ethan's shoulder, and Diego was drowsy in Isabel's arms. Ethan stood carefully, moving to look out at the city lights. I haven't felt peace in 40 days, he said quietly. Haven't slept more than an hour at a time, haven't been able to eat or work or think about anything except the emptiness. But sitting here with you, with them, it's the first time since the accident that I feel like I can breathe. Isabel rose and moved to stand beside him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. I know that feeling, she said softly. The emptiness. When Victor left, he took everything, not just our stuff, but my sense of worth. He told me I was nothing without him, that no one would ever want a woman with 2 babies that weren't even hers. Ethan turned to face her, his eyes blazing with protective fury. He was wrong. So completely, utterly wrong. Was he? Isabel asked, her voice small. Ethan, I was homeless 3 hours ago. I have no family, no education past high school, no skills except changing diapers and making minimum wage at whatever job will let me bring the boys. Stop. Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. He shifted Lucas to one arm and reached out to cup Isabel's face with his free hand. You're a mother. You're a protector. You're brave enough to sit in the rain and ask for help rather than give up. You're strong enough to love children who aren't biologically yours, as if they were your own heart walking around outside your body. You're beautiful, inside and out, and any man who can't see that is blind and doesn't deserve you. Isabel leaned into his touch, feeling tears spill over. When was the last time someone had spoken to her with such respect, such genuine admiration? I'm scared, she whispered. This is all so fast, so intense. What if we're making a huge mistake? Then we'll figure it out together, Ethan said simply. But Isabel, I need you to understand something. This isn't charity. This isn't me rescuing you. This is me being honest about what I need. I need a family. I need a reason to wake up in the morning. I need to love someone and be loved back. You're not taking anything from me. You're giving me everything I thought I'd lost forever. Diego chose that moment to make a soft baby sound in his sleep. And both Ethan and Isabel looked down at him with matching expressions of tenderness. We should put them to bed, Isabel said softly. I had Carmen set up the guest room, Ethan said. There are cribs, a changing table, everything you might need. But Isabel, I want you to know there are no expectations. We can take this as slow as you need, separate rooms, separate lives, if that's what you want while we figure this out. Isabel looked at this incredible man holding her son like he was precious cargo, offering her everything while asking for nothing in return, and felt something shift in her chest. Fear was still there, but underneath it was something stronger. Hope, gratitude, and the first stirrings of what might someday become love. What if I don't want separate lives? She asked quietly. Ethan's breath caught. What do you want? I want to try, Isabel said, her voice growing stronger. I want to see if we can build something real together, not just for them. She nodded toward the sleeping babies, but for us. Ethan's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face. I'd like that too. They walked together toward the guest room, but at the doorway, Ethan paused. There's one more thing, he said quietly. Tomorrow, I want to make this official legal adoption papers for the boys, and if you're willing, a real wedding ceremony. Nothing big, just us and whoever you'd like there. But I want Diego and Lucas to have my name, my protection, legally, and I want you to be my wife in every way that matters. Isabel's heart hammered against her ribs. Ethan, think about it tonight, he said gently, but know that I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You 3 are my family now. That's not going to change, whether we have papers or not. But I want the world to know you belong with me. As they settled the babies in their cribs that Ethan had somehow arranged to have delivered and assembled in the few hours since his phone call, Isabel watched her new husband-to-be tuck blankets around tiny sleeping forms, with infinite tenderness. Buenas noches, Ethan whispered, in careful Spanish, sweet dreams. And for the first time in weeks, Isabel believed they might be. Chapter 3. Building Our Kingdom. The morning sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows announced that Isabel hadn't been dreaming. The sound of a deep, masculine voice singing softly in Spanish from the kitchen confirmed it, occasionally stumbling over pronunciation, but radiating such warmth that her chest constricted with emotion. She'd slept more peacefully than she had in months, despite occupying an unfamiliar bed in unfamiliar surroundings, perhaps because of it. For the first time since Victor's abandonment, she'd felt secure enough to truly rest, knowing Diego and Lucas were protected, nourished, and warm in the adjacent room. Isabel pulled on the silk robe Ethan had left, folded at the foot of her bed. Everything about this place screamed luxury, from the Egyptian cotton sheets to the marble bathroom, and she padded barefoot toward the kitchen, following the sound of Ethan's voice and the incredible smell of coffee and something that might have been pancakes. She found him at the stove, dressed in jeans and a simple gray t-shirt that showed off the breadth of his shoulders, flipping pancakes with one hand while holding Diego with the other. Lucas sat in a high chair that definitely hadn't been there last night, contentedly gnawing on what looked like a teething biscuit. "Good morning," Ethan said, turning to smile at her, and Isabel's breath caught. In the morning light, he was even more handsome than he'd been in the rain, his dark hair slightly mussed, his eyes bright with something that looked like happiness. "I hope you don't mind that I got them up. They were starting to fuss, and I thought you could use the sleep." "You made breakfast," Isabel said, still trying to process the scene in front of her, and bought high chairs and apparently went shopping for baby food. "Carmen helped," Ethan admitted, indicating the older Latina woman who was setting the table with what appeared to be actual china. "Isabel, this is Carmen Lopez. She's been taking care of me for 10 years, and she's going to help us take care of the boys, too, if that's okay with you." Carmen approached with a warm smile, immediately wrapping Isabel in a motherly hug that smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. "Mija," she said in accented English. "Ethan told me everything. These babies are beautiful, and you are exactly what this house has been missing." Isabel felt tears prick her eyes at the genuine warmth in Carmen's voice. "Thank you," she managed. "Carmen has 3 grown children and 6 grandchildren," Ethan explained, expertly transferring Diego to his other arm when the baby began to squirm. "She knows more about babies than both of us combined. And this one," Carmen said, gently poking Ethan's arm, "he is a natural. I watched him this morning with Los Niños, and I think, finally, this man remembers how to smile." Ethan's cheeks actually flushed slightly, and Isabel found it utterly charming. Here was one of the most powerful men in Seattle blushing because his housekeeper was praising his baby-handling skills. "They're easy to love," Ethan said simply, his eyes meeting Isabel's over Diego's head. Breakfast was surprisingly normal, considering they were eating off china that probably cost more than Isabel had made in a year. Ethan had somehow procured a selection of baby foods, and he and Isabel took turns feeding the twins, while Carmen kept their plates full of the fluffiest pancakes Isabel had ever tasted. "So," Ethan said as Lucas grabbed enthusiastically at his spoon, getting more sweet potato puree on his face than in his mouth, "I've cleared my schedule for today. If you're still willing, I'd like to go to the courthouse this morning, get the adoption papers started, and maybe—" He paused, suddenly looking uncertain, "maybe get married, if you haven't changed your mind in the daylight." Isabel studied his face, looking for any sign that he was having second thoughts. Instead, she saw hope mixed with vulnerability and something that looked almost like fear that she might say no. "I haven't changed my mind," she said quietly. "But Ethan, are you sure? Really sure? Because once we do this, once you adopt them, they're going to be your sons legally, forever. Even if things don't work out between us, they'll still be your responsibility." Ethan set down his coffee cup and reached across the table to take her hand. "Isabel, I want you to understand something. Last night, when I held Diego and Lucas, when I fed them and rocked them to sleep, I felt something I thought had died with Lily and Noah. I felt like a father not, like I was playing pretend or doing someone a favor, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be." He paused, his thumb stroking gently across her knuckles. "These boys aren't going to be my responsibility. They're going to be my sons. And you're not going to be a woman I married out of pity or grief. You're going to be my wife, the mother of my children, The love of my life, if you'll let me earn that place. Isabel's heart hammered against her ribs. The love of your life, Ethan? We barely know each other. I know enough, Ethan said firmly. I know you sing to them in Spanish when they're scared. I know you'd rather go hungry than let them miss a meal. I know you have the most beautiful laugh I've ever heard. Yes. I heard you laugh when Lucas spit up on Carmen's apron. And I know that when you smile, really smile, it lights up your entire face. That's not love, Isabel protested weakly. That's attraction. Infatuation, maybe. Ethan agreed. But it's also the foundation for love, isn't it? I loved Lily completely, desperately, with everything I had, and I know the difference between what I felt for her and what I'm starting to feel for you. What's the difference? Ethan was quiet for a moment, his eyes growing distant. With Lily, love grew slowly. We were friends first, then more. It was comfortable, safe, built on shared dreams and common ground. His gaze refocused on Isabel's face. With you, it's like lightning instant, powerful, overwhelming. I look at you, and I don't just want to love you. I need to. Like my heart recognized something my mind hasn't figured out yet. Isabel stared at him, this incredible man who was offering her everything she'd ever dreamed of and more. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, Ethan said honestly. Terrified. But I'm more scared of letting you walk away than I am of jumping into this with both feet. Diego chose that moment to reach for Ethan, making the soft baby sounds that meant he wanted attention. Ethan immediately scooped him up, and the baby settled against his chest with a contented sigh. See, Ethan said softly, he knows. Children always know. 3 hours later, Isabel found herself standing in Judge Margaret Thompson's chambers, wearing a simple but elegant dress that Carmen had somehow procured in exactly her size. Holding Lucas while Ethan held Diego, listening to a kind-faced woman in black robes, ask if they understood the commitment they were making. Mr. Carter, Judge Thompson said, you understand that by adopting Diego and Lucas, you are accepting full legal and financial responsibility for their welfare until they reach the age of majority, regardless of what happens in your marriage to Miss Morales. I understand, Your Honor, Ethan said firmly, and I want that responsibility. These are my sons. And Miss Morales, you understand that you are giving Mr. Carter full parental rights, that he will legally be their father in every sense of the word? Yes, Your Honor, Isabel said, looking at Ethan holding Diego with such natural tenderness. I can't think of anyone I'd rather have as their father. The paperwork seemed to take forever. But finally, Judge Thompson was smiling at them and saying the words that made it official. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Carter. Diego and Lucas are now legally your sons. Mrs. Carter. Isabel Carter. She tested the name silently and found she liked the sound of it. The wedding ceremony itself was brief but beautiful. Carmen and her husband, Javier, served as witnesses, both of them beaming as Ethan and Isabel exchanged vows they'd written that morning. Isabel, Ethan said, his voice steady but his hands shaking slightly as he held hers, I promise to love you and Diego and Lucas with everything I have. I promise to be the husband you deserve and the father they need. I promise to choose you every day for the rest of my life. Ethan, Isabel replied, her voice thick with emotion. I promise to trust you with my heart and my children's hearts. I promise to build a life with you based on love, not fear. I promise to be your partner in everything, for as long as you'll have me. When Judge Thompson pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan's kiss was soft and sweet, full of promise rather than passion. But when he pulled back and whispered, I love you, Mrs. Carter, against her lips, Isabel felt something crack open in her chest. I love you too, she whispered back, and was surprised to realize she meant it. The rest of the day passed in a blur of small domestic moments that felt like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. Ethan insisting on stopping at a jewelry store to buy proper wedding rings, Carmen taking approximately 200 pictures of their family, the twins being remarkably well-behaved for babies who'd had their entire world turned upside down in 24 hours. That evening, after Diego and Lucas were asleep in their new nursery, Ethan had somehow had the guest room completely transformed while they were at the courthouse. Isabel found herself standing on the balcony, looking out at Seattle's skyline and trying to process everything that had happened. "Regrets?" Ethan asked softly, joining her at the railing. "No," Isabel said, surprised by how certain she sounded, just overwhelmed. "I think. Yesterday, I was homeless. Today, I'm married to a man I'd never met, with 2 sons who have a trust fund and college accounts, and a father who already loves them more than their biological parents ever did." "About that," Ethan said carefully, "I hope you don't mind, but I set up accounts for them college funds, trust funds, for when they turn 25, emergency medical accounts. I want them to have every opportunity, every advantage I can give them." Isabel turned to look at him. "Why would I mind? You're securing their futures. Some people might think I was trying to buy their love. Or yours. Are you?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Maybe at first," he admitted. "Last night, in the rain, I think I would have done anything to convince you to say yes. But now it's not about buying anything. It's about providing for my family. My family." The word sent warmth, spreading through Isabel's chest. "Ethan," she said softly, "can I ask you something personal?" "We're married now," he said with a small smile. "Everything's personal. What was Lily like, really like? I feel like I should know about the woman who had your heart first." Ethan's expression grew soft and sad. She was sunshine, literally. She had this way of making everyone around her feel happier, more hopeful. She saw the best in people, even when they couldn't see it in themselves. He paused, his eyes growing distant. "She would have loved you immediately, would have seen what I see, that you're strong and brave and beautiful, inside and out. She always said the measure of a person wasn't what they had, but what they were willing to give up for the people they loved. Do you think she'd approve of this? Of us?" Ethan was quiet for so long that Isabel began to worry she'd overstepped. But when he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I think she sent you to me," he said quietly. "I think she knew I was dying without her, and she couldn't bear to see me give up on love entirely, so she put you right where I'd find you, right when I needed you most." Isabel felt tears prick her eyes. "That's a beautiful thought." "It's more than a thought," Ethan said, turning to face her fully. "It's what I believe. And I think she'd want me to tell you that loving you doesn't diminish what I felt for her. It honors it, because she taught me that love multiplies when it's shared. It doesn't divide." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city lights twinkle below them. Finally, Ethan spoke again. "There's something else I want to talk to you about," he said. "I know we agreed to take things slow, but I need you to know I don't want separate bedrooms forever, not because I expect anything physical, but because I want to fall asleep next to my wife. I want to wake up with you in my arms. I want us to be a real family in every way." Isabel's heart began to race. "Ethan, I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give," he said quickly. "I just want you to know that when you are ready, when you want more than just a marriage of convenience, I'll be here, waiting, hoping." Isabel looked at this incredible man who'd literally swept her off the streets and given her a fairy tale life, and felt desire stir in her belly for the first time since Victor had left. Ethan was handsome, yes, but more than that, he was kind, gentle. He looked at her like she was precious, like she was chosen rather than settled for. "What if I'm ready now?" she asked quietly. Ethan's breath caught. "Isabel, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to," she interrupted. "But Ethan, you said you needed a family." "So do I. I need a husband who loves me, not just tolerates me. I need someone who sees me as a partner, not a charity case. And I need," she paused, heat flooding her cheeks, "I need someone who wants me, not just as a mother for his children, but as a woman." Ethan stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "I want you," he said, his voice rough with honesty. "God, Isabel, I want you so much it's driving me insane. But I want to do this right. I want to earn your love, your trust, your desire. I don't want you to feel like you owe me anything." "What if I told you that you've already earned it?" Isabel asked, reaching up to cup his face. "What if I told you that watching you with Diego and Lucas today made me fall a little bit in love with you? What if I said I want to share your bed tonight, not out of obligation, but because I want to start building something real with you?" Ethan's eyes darkened with desire and something deeper. Then I'd say I'm the luckiest man alive, he whispered, leaning down to rest his forehead against hers. And I'd ask if I could kiss my wife properly for the first time. Please. Isabel breathed. When Ethan's lips met hers, it was nothing like the chaste kiss at their wedding ceremony. This kiss was hungry, desperate, full of 40 days of grief transforming into hope. 28 years of feeling unwanted, melting into being cherished. Isabel pressed herself against him, feeling his hands tangle in her hair, hearing the soft groan he made when she opened her mouth for him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he whispered. "I know it's too soon to say it, too soon to feel it, but I do. I love you, Isabel Carter." "I love you too," she whispered back, and meant it with every fiber of her being. As Ethan swept her into his arms and carried her toward their bedroom, Isabel thought about fairy tales and second chances, and how sometimes the most beautiful love stories began in the darkest moments. Behind them, the city sparkled like stars, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled softly, as if the universe itself was applauding their new beginning. Chapter 4. When Passion Awakens. 3 months had elapsed since that transformative night in the rain, yet Isabel occasionally awakened expecting to find herself back in a shelter, cradling hungry babies while wondering about their next meal. Instead, she awakened in silk sheets, enveloped by Ethan's cologne and the steady rhythm of his breathing beside her. Their marriage had evolved into a rhythm that felt simultaneously surreal and perfectly natural. Ethan worked from home more frequently now, conducting video conferences while Diego and Lucas played at his feet. Isabel had enrolled in online business courses, Ethan's gentle suggestion when she'd expressed feeling purposeless and discovered a natural talent for marketing and social media strategy. But if she was honest, the most surprising part wasn't the luxury or the opportunities. It was how right it felt to be Ethan's wife, how natural it felt when he kissed her goodbye in the mornings, how her heart skipped when she heard his key in the door at night, how perfectly they fit together when they lay in bed talking about their days. They hadn't made love, yet they'd come close several times, passionate kisses that left them both breathless, gentle touches that made Isabel's skin burn with want, but something always held them back. Ethan was careful, almost reverent in his touches, as if he was afraid she might break, and Isabel, despite her growing desire, still carried the scars of Victor's cruel words about her worth. Tonight felt different, though. Outside, a storm raged, not unlike the one that had brought them together, and the twins were sleeping peacefully in their nursery. Ethan was in his study, working late on a deal that had been consuming his attention for weeks, and Isabel found herself drawn to the large windows that looked out over the city. Lightning illuminated the sky in brilliant flashes, and thunder rolled across the horizon like the gods themselves were applauding nature's power. There was something primal about storms, something that spoke to the deepest parts of the human soul. Tonight, watching the lightning dance across the sky, Isabel felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Ethan's voice came from behind her, and she turned to find him standing in the doorway, his tie loosened and his shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked tired but happy, his eyes soft as they took in the sight of her in the silk nightgown he'd bought for her. "I love storms," Isabel said softly. "Always have. My grandmother used to say they were the earth's way of cleaning itself, washing away everything that no longer served." Ethan moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Is that what happened to us? Did the storm wash away everything that came before?" "Maybe," Isabel said, leaning into his side when his arm came around her waist. "Or maybe it washed us toward each other." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the storm rage outside their safe, warm haven, but Isabel was increasingly aware of Ethan's presence beside her, steady rhythm of his breathing, the way his fingers traced small circles on her hip, the masculine scent of his cologne mixed with something uniquely him. "Ethan," she said softly, not sure how to voice what she was feeling. He turned to look at her, and something in her expression must have given her away because his eyes darkened immediately. "I want—" She paused, heat flooding her cheeks. Even after 3 months of marriage, she still felt shy about expressing her desires. Victor had made her feel like her needs were wrong, shameful. "What do you want, mi amor?" Ethan asked, his voice gentle but rough around the edges. The endearment in Spanish made her heart flutter. Ethan had been practicing, wanting to be able to speak to their sons in both languages, but hearing him call her "my love" in her grandmother's tongue never failed to make her weak in the knees. "You," she whispered, turning in his arms to face him fully. "I want you, Ethan, all of you, tonight." Ethan's breath caught, his hands tightening on her waist. "Isabel, are you sure? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back. You'll be mine completely, and I'll be yours." "I've been yours since the moment you knelt in the rain," she said, reaching up to cup his face. "I've been waiting for you to claim me." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating their faces in stark relief, and something shifted in Ethan's expression. The careful restraint he'd been maintaining for months cracked, and Isabel saw hunger flare in his storm-gray eyes. "I've been trying to be patient," he said, his voice rough with desire, "trying to be a gentleman. But God, Isabel, I want you so much it's killing me. I lie next to you every night, wanting to touch you, to love you the way a husband should love his wife." "Then stop being a gentleman," Isabel whispered, pressing herself against him. "Stop being patient. Love me, Ethan. Make me yours." With a sound that was half groan, half prayer, Ethan's mouth crashed down on hers. This kiss was nothing like the gentle, careful touches they'd shared before. This was hungry, desperate, full of 3 months of pent-up desire and need. Isabel melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she kissed him back with equal fervor. Ethan's hands roamed her body with reverent hunger, mapping every curve through the silk of her nightgown. When his lips left hers to trail down her neck, Isabel gasped, her head falling back to give him better access. "You're so beautiful," he murmured against her skin, his voice thick with emotion. "So perfect. I can't believe you're mine." "Show me," Isabel breathed, her hands working at the buttons of his shirt. "Show me I'm yours." Ethan lifted her easily, carrying her to their bed as lightning continued to flash outside. He set her down gently, his eyes never leaving hers as he slowly, reverently slipped the straps of her nightgown from her shoulders. "You're sure?" he asked one more time, even as his hands shook with restraint. "I've never been more sure of anything," Isabel said, helping him push the silk fabric down her body. When Ethan saw her fully for the first time, his expression was one of pure worship. "Amorosa," he whispered in Spanish, "absolutely beautiful." Ethan's touch was gentle but sure, as he explored every inch of her skin, as if he was memorizing her. Every kiss, every caress, was a declaration of love, a promise of forever. When he finally joined with her, their eyes locked. It felt like coming home. "I love you," Ethan whispered against her lips as they moved together in perfect rhythm. "I love you so much, Isabel. You saved me." She gasped, her hands tangling in his hair. "You gave me everything." Thunder crashed overhead as they lost themselves in each other, 3 months of careful courtship exploding into passionate love. Ethan worshipped her body like she was sacred, and Isabel gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back. When they finally collapsed together, breathless and sated, Ethan pulled her close against his chest, pressing kiss after kiss to her hair. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "Only that we waited so long," Isabel said, tracing patterns on his chest with her fingertips. Ethan laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "I wanted to do this right, wanted you to be sure." "I was sure the night you proposed in the rain," Isabel said, tilting her head to look at him. "But Ethan, I need you to know something. What we just shared, it wasn't just physical for me. When you love me like that, when you touch me like I'm precious, it heals something in me that I thought was broken forever." Ethan's eyes grew bright with emotion. "Victor really did a number on you, didn't he?" Isabel nodded, not trusting her voice. "Look at me," Ethan said gently, tilting her chin up. "You are precious. You are worthy of love, of passion, of being worshipped. Any man who made you feel otherwise was a fool who didn't deserve you." "How do you always know exactly what to say?" Isabel asked, feeling tears prick her eyes. "Because I love you," Ethan said simply, "and when you love someone the way I love you, their happiness becomes your priority, their healing becomes your mission." They lay in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the storm rage outside while they basked in the warmth of their love. Finally, Isabel spoke again. "Ethan, I want more children," she said quietly. I want to give you a biological child, a piece of us together. Ethan's arms tightened around her. Are you sure? Diego and Lucas are enough for me. More than enough. I know they are, Isabel said, pressing a kiss to his chest, but I want to see what a baby with your eyes and my stubbornness would look like. I want to give you the experience of feeling your child move in my belly, of being there for the birth. Isabel, Ethan's voice was thick with emotion. Nothing would make me happier, but only if you're sure, only if it's what you want too, not just what you think I want. I'm sure, she said firmly. I want to build a family with you, Ethan. I wanted all the sleepless nights, the chaos, the beautiful mess of it all. Ethan rolled them over so he was looking down at her, his expression serious. If we're going to do this, I want to do it right. I want you to stop taking birth control, but I also want you to see the best doctors, have the best prenatal care. I want to make sure you and any baby we have are completely healthy and safe. Okay, Isabel agreed, touched by his protective instincts. And I want to marry you again, Ethan said suddenly. What? Isabel laughed. We're already married. I want to marry you because I love you, not because we were both desperate and broken, Ethan explained. I want a real wedding, with your family there, with vows that come from love instead of grief. I want to choose you again, every day, for the rest of our lives. Isabel felt her heart swell with love for this incredible man. Yes, she whispered. Yes, to all of it, to the wedding, to the babies, to choosing each other every day. Ethan's kiss was soft and sweet, full of promise and hope. Outside, the storm was beginning to calm, but inside their bedroom, a different kind of storm was just beginning, the beautiful, chaotic, passionate storm of a love that would last a lifetime. As they made love again, slower this time, savoring each touch and kiss, Isabel thought about how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she'd been broken, alone, convinced she was unworthy of love. Now she was cherished, desired, completely and utterly loved by a man who saw her as his equal, his partner, his everything. I love you, Ethan Carter, she whispered as they moved together. And I love you, Isabel Carter, he replied, forever and always. Outside, the last of the thunder rolled away, leaving only the gentle sound of rain against the windows, the same rain that had brought them together, now blessing their union as they finally, truly became one. Chapter 5. A New Beginning. 6 months after their passionate, storm-lit night, Isabel stood before the bathroom mirror, staring at the pregnancy test, trembling in her hands. 2 distinct pink lines, unmistakable. She was carrying Ethan's child. Tears streamed down her face, tears of joy, gratitude, and a love so overwhelming it threatened to bring her to her knees. After everything she'd been through, after all the pain and abandonment, she was carrying the child of the man who'd saved her, who'd loved her back to life. Mommy? Diego's voice came from the doorway, his 2-year-old face scrunched with concern. He and Lucas had learned to walk, and were developing their vocabulary with Ethan's patient guidance, speaking both English and Spanish words. Why crying? Happy tears, Isabel assured him, kneeling down to gather both boys in her arms. Mommy has very happy tears. Papa make you happy? Lucas asked, his little hand patting her cheek. Papa makes me very happy, Isabel confirmed, her heart swelling. Both boys had started calling Ethan Papa naturally, without any prompting. Ethan's eyes had filled with tears the first time Diego had reached for him and said, Papa, up. And Isabel had fallen even deeper in love with her husband, watching him embrace his role as their father. Where Papa? Diego asked. Papa's working, Isabel said, standing up and taking their hands. But guess what? We're going to go surprise him. The boys cheered, always excited for any opportunity to visit Ethan's office. Isabel's hands shook as she got them dressed, her mind racing with how to tell Ethan the news. They'd been trying for a baby for 3 months now, and while Ethan never pressured her, she could see the hope in his eyes every month when her period arrived. Ethan's office was on the top floor of the Carter Industries building, and the boys knew the way by heart. They burst through the doors of his executive suite like tiny hurricanes, calling Papa Papa at the tops of their lungs. Ethan immediately abandoned the conference call he was on, his face lighting up as Diego and Lucas launched themselves at him. Miss Harrows, he said, catching them both in a bear hug. "What are you doing here?" "Mommy has happy tears," Lucas announced importantly. Ethan's eyes immediately found Isabel's over the boys' heads, concern flickering in their depths. "Happy tears?" "We need to talk," Isabel said, her voice barely steady, privately. Ethan's assistant, Rachel, immediately stepped forward. "I'll take the boys to the break room. There are cookies and juice boxes, and I think Diego wanted to see the new fish in the aquarium." "Fish!" both boys exclaimed, allowing themselves to be led away. As soon as they were alone, Ethan crossed to Isabel, his hands framing her face. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm perfect," Isabel said, reaching into her purse and pulling out the pregnancy test. "We're perfect." Ethan stared at the test for a long moment, his face cycling through disbelief, joy, and pure elation. Is this? "We're having a baby," Isabel whispered, and Ethan's whoop of joy was so loud it probably carried to the floor below. He spun her around, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. When he set her down, his kisses covered every inch of her face. "I love you," he said between kisses. "I love you so much. Are you happy? Are you scared? How are you feeling?" "I'm everything," Isabel laughed. "Happy, scared, excited, overwhelmed. But mostly I'm grateful. Grateful that our baby will have you as a father." Ethan dropped to his knees in front of her, pressing his face against her still flat stomach. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "This is your papa. I can't wait to meet you." Isabel's hands threaded through his hair as she watched this powerful man speak to their unborn child with such tenderness. "Ethan," she said, "I want to do something meaningful. I've been thinking about it for weeks, and now—" She paused, her hand moving to her stomach. "I want to start a foundation for women like I was single mothers, women who've been abandoned, who need help getting back on their feet." Ethan stood slowly, his expression serious. "Tell me more." "I want to call it the Lily and Noah Foundation," Isabel said, watching Ethan's face carefully. "In honor of your first wife and son. I want to create a place where women can get job training, childcare, housing assistance, a place where they can rebuild their lives with dignity." Ethan's breath caught, his eyes filling with tears. "Isabel." "Lily was a pediatric nurse," Isabel continued. "She helped children. I want to help their mothers. I want to create something beautiful from the pain, something that honors her memory while building our future." "You want to name it after Lily," Ethan said quietly. "I want to honor the woman who loved you first," Isabel said firmly. "The woman who taught you how to love, who made you the man I fell in love with. And I want to honor Noah, the son you'll always carry in your heart, alongside the children we'll raise together." Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "How did I get so lucky?" he whispered into her hair. "How did I find someone who understands that loving Lily doesn't mean loving you less? Because love multiplies," Isabel said, echoing words Ethan had said to her months ago. "Your love for Lily made you capable of loving me and Diego and Lucas and this baby. It all connects." "The Lily and Noah Foundation," Ethan said, testing the words. "I love it. And I want to fund it completely, whatever you need, whatever it takes." "It's not about the money," Isabel said, though she was grateful for his support. "It's about creating something lasting, something that helps women realize they're worthy of love and respect and second chances." 6 weeks later, Isabel stood in front of the renovated community center that would house the foundation, her hand resting on her growing belly. Morning sickness had been brutal, but Ethan had been incredible holding her hair back, bringing her crackers and ginger tea, working from home so he could take care of her and the boys. The grand opening was today, and Isabel was nervous. They'd invited local media, city officials, and dozens of women who'd already applied for the program. Diego and Lucas were with Carmen, dressed in tiny suits and bow ties, excited to see Mommy's work. "You ready for this?" Ethan asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "I think so," Isabel said, leaning back against his chest. "It feels surreal. 6 months ago, I was the woman who needed this place. Now I'm running it. And you're going to change lives," Ethan said, pressing a kiss to her temple, "just like you changed mine." The ceremony was beautiful. Ethan spoke about Lily's legacy of helping others, his voice strong and clear as he honored his first wife's memory. Isabel spoke about second chances and the power of community, her passion evident in every word. But the moment that brought tears to everyone's eyes was when Diego and Lucas toddled up to the microphone. Ethan had been teaching them a speech, and they delivered it with 3-year-old seriousness. "This place helped mommies," Diego said carefully, "like our mommy. Papa says all mommies deserve love," Lucas added. The crowd erupted in applause, and Isabel felt her heart swell with pride. Her boys understood, even at their young age, that love came in many forms, and that families were built on choice, not just biology. After the ceremony, as they toured the facility's job training rooms, a childcare center, counseling offices, even temporary housing, Isabel was overwhelmed by the positive response. Women approached her with tears in their eyes, thanking her for creating a place where they could rebuild their lives with dignity. "Mrs. Carter," one young mother said, holding a baby who couldn't have been more than 6 months old, "I read about the foundation online. My boyfriend left when he found out I was pregnant. I've been living in my car for 3 weeks." Isabel's heart broke and soared simultaneously. "What's your name?" "Sophia. Sofia Alvarez." "Sophia, you're going to be okay," Isabel said firmly, taking the young woman's hands. "We're going to help you find housing, get you enrolled in our job training program, and make sure your baby has everything she needs. You're not alone anymore." As they talked, Ethan appeared with Sophia's intake paperwork, already started, having anticipated Isabel's response. Watching him help this young mother, seeing the compassion in his eyes, Isabel fell in love with him all over again. That night, after the boys were asleep, Ethan and Isabel sat in their living room, her feet in his lap as he rubbed them gently. "Today was perfect," Isabel said, her hand resting on her belly where their baby was growing. "You were perfect," Ethan corrected. "Watching you with those women, seeing how you made them feel valued and hopeful. I've never been more proud to be your husband." "We make a good team," Isabel said softly. "The best team," Ethan agreed, his hand joining hers on her stomach. "How's our little one today?" "Active," Isabel laughed. "I think he or she enjoyed all the excitement." "Speaking of which," Ethan said, his expression growing serious, "I want to ask you something." "What?" "I want us to renew our vows," Ethan said. "I know we talked about it before, but now, with the baby coming, with the foundation launched, with everything we've built together, I want to marry you again, not because we're desperate and broken, but because we're whole and happy and choosing each other every day." Isabel's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I want that too. I want your family there this time," Ethan continued. "I want Diego and Lucas to be part of the ceremony. I want to celebrate not just our love, but our family, our future." "When?" Isabel asked. "Before the baby comes," Ethan said. "I want to make these vows to you while you're carrying our child, while Diego and Lucas can understand what's happening. I want them to see their parents choosing love every single day." "I love you, Ethan Carter," Isabel said, leaning forward to kiss him softly. "I love you too, Isabel Carter," he replied, "more than I ever thought possible." As they sat together in the home they'd built, surrounded by pictures of their boys and plans for their foundation, with their baby growing safely inside her, Isabel marveled at how much her life had changed. She'd gone from begging in the rain to building an empire of love and hope, and the best part was, this was just the beginning. Chapter 6. The Storms We Weather. At 7 months pregnant, Isabel had never felt more radiant or more vulnerable. Her belly had curved into a perfect sphere that Ethan couldn't resist caressing, and Diego and Lucas, now almost 3 years old, delighted in conversing with their hermanita or hermanito each evening before bed. The Lily and Noah Foundation flourished, having assisted over 100 women in its initial 6 months, and their vow renewal was scheduled for the following month. Everything in their world was perfect, which Isabel had learned was usually when life decided to test you. The first test arrived on a Tuesday morning in the form of Eleanor Carter, Ethan's mother, whom Isabel had met only once at their small courthouse wedding. Eleanor had made her disapproval clear then with pursed lips and cold handshakes, but she'd stayed away since until now. Isabel answered the door, expecting the grocery delivery. but instead found herself face to face with an elegantly dressed woman in her 60s. Her silver hair perfectly styled and her blue eyes, so like Ethan's, filled with disdain. "Mrs. Carter," Eleanor said, her voice dripping with false politeness. "We need to talk." "Eleanor," Isabel replied carefully, one hand instinctively moving to protect her belly. "Ethan's at the office. I can call him." "I'm not here to see my son," Eleanor interrupted, pushing past Isabel into the penthouse. "I'm here to see you." Diego and Lucas looked up from their toys, their nearly 3-year-old faces uncertain at the tension in the room. Isabel immediately moved to them, gathering them close. "Boys, why don't you go play in your room for a few minutes?" she suggested gently. "But Mommy," Diego started. "Go on, mi amor, I'll be right there." Once the boys were gone, Eleanor turned to face Isabel fully, her expression cold and calculating. "I'll get straight to the point. I know what you are." "Excuse me?" "A gold digger. A woman who trapped my grieving son into marriage by playing on his emotions with your sob story and those children." Isabel felt her temper flare but kept her voice level. "Those children are Ethan's sons. He adopted them legally and loves them completely. Those children," Eleanor spat, "are not Carter blood. Just like the bastard you're carrying isn't really my grandchild." The venom in Eleanor's voice made Isabel's hands shake with rage, but she forced herself to remain calm. "You need to leave now." "Not until I make you an offer," Eleanor said, reaching into her Hermes bag and pulling out a check. $5 million. "Take it, disappear with your children, and never contact Ethan again." Isabel stared at the check, her heart pounding with fury. "You think you can buy me?" "I think you're a smart woman who knows a good deal when she sees one," Eleanor replied. $5 million is more money than someone like you could ever hope to see otherwise." "Someone like me?" Isabel's voice was dangerously quiet. "A poor Hispanic woman with children from different fathers, trading on her looks and her fertility to trap a wealthy man," Eleanor said cruelly. "Did you really think Ethan would stay interested once the novelty wore off? Once you got fat and old and had given him a few babies to play with?" Each word was designed to cut, to tear at the insecurities Isabel had worked so hard to overcome. For a moment, she felt the old shame creeping in, Victor's voice echoing in Eleanor's cruel words. But then she remembered Ethan's hands on her belly that morning, whispering to their baby. She remembered him teaching Diego and Lucas to say, "I love you" in Spanish. She remembered him crying with joy when she'd told him about the pregnancy. "Get out," Isabel said, her voice still wrapped in silk. "Think about it," Eleanor pressed, leaving the check on the coffee table. "Ethan will tire of you eventually. Rich men always do. At least this way, you'll have something to show for it." "I said get out." Isabel's voice rose, and she heard Diego and Lucas's bedroom door open. "Mommy?" Lucas's small voice called. "You okay?" That's when Eleanor made her fatal mistake. She looked at the boys with undisguised disgust. "Those children will never be Carter's, no matter what papers say. They're not our blood. They don't belong in our world." Something primal and fierce rose in Isabel's chest. Nobody spoke about her children that way. "You want to know what I think of your offer?" Isabel asked. Picking up the check, Eleanor smiled smugly. "I knew you'd see reason." Isabel tore the check into pieces, letting the fragments flutter to the floor. "I think you're a sad, bitter woman who raised a son despite herself. Ethan is the man he is not because of you, but in spite of you. And if you ever speak about my children that way again, if you ever set foot in our home uninvited, I will make sure Ethan knows exactly what kind of person his mother really is." Eleanor's face flushed red. "How dare you?" "How dare I, what? Love your son? Be a good mother to children who needed one? Build a life based on respect and partnership instead of money and status?" Isabel stepped closer, her pregnant belly between them like a shield. "I'm not going anywhere, Eleanor. This is my home, these are my children, and Ethan is my husband. We're a family, and nothing you say or do will change that. Ethan will see through you eventually." Eleanor hissed. "Maybe," Isabel said calmly, "but until then, I'll love him with everything I have. I'll be the wife he deserves, and the mother his children need. And when our baby is born, I'll make sure he or she knows they have one grandmother who loves them unconditionally. Eleanor gathered her purse, her composure cracking. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Isabel said firmly, opening the door, because Ethan will choose us. He already has. After Eleanor left, Isabel sank onto the couch, shaking with adrenaline and pregnancy hormones. Diego and Lucas crept out of their room, immediately climbing onto her lap. "Mommy sad?" Diego asked, patting her face. "Just tired, baby," Isabel said, holding them close. "But I'm okay." When Ethan came home that evening, he found Isabel on the balcony, staring out at the city. He immediately sensed something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Isabel leaned into his warmth, drawing strength from his presence. "Your mother paid me a visit today." Ethan's arms tightened around her. What did she say? Isabel told him everything: the check, the cruel words about the children, the attempt to buy her off. With each detail, she felt Ethan's body grow tenser behind her. "She offered you $5 million to leave me?" Ethan's voice was deadly quiet. "She called Diego and Lucas bastards," Isabel said, and felt Ethan flinch. "She said they weren't Carter blood, that they didn't belong in our world." Ethan was silent for a long moment, his hands protective over her belly. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but implacable. "She done, Isabel. She crossed a line I told her never to cross. I warned her when we got married that you and the boys were my family now, and anyone who couldn't accept that wouldn't be part of our lives. She's your mother. She stopped being my mother the moment she tried to destroy my family," Ethan said firmly. "Blood doesn't give you the right to hurt the people I love." That night, Ethan called his mother and had a conversation that Isabel could hear through the closed office door, his voice rising and falling with controlled fury. When he emerged, his face was set in stone. "She's cut off," he said simply, "from the company, from the family trust, from our lives. I've made it clear that if she ever contacts you or the children again, I'll take legal action." "Ethan, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," he interrupted, pulling her into his arms. "Isabel, you and Diego and Lucas and this baby are my everything, my priority, my choice. And I'll protect that choice with everything I have." 2 weeks later, Victor's sudden reappearance brought a different kind of storm. Isabel was at the foundation, meeting with new clients. When Rachel called to inform her, Victor was in the lobby, demanding to see her. Her blood ran cold. Victor had signed away all parental rights when he'd abandoned them 2 years earlier. But his sudden appearance couldn't mean anything good. "Send him up," Isabel said, her hand moving protectively to her belly. "But call Ethan. Tell him Victor's here." Victor looked older, thinner, with the hollow-eyed look of someone who'd been using drugs. He swaggered into her office like he owned it, his eyes taking in the expensive furnishings with obvious calculation. "Well, well," he said with a cruel smile, "look who landed on her feet. Or should I say on her back?" "What do you want, Victor?" Isabel asked, staying behind her desk. "What's mine?" he said simply. "Half of everything you got from your rich husband. I figure I'm owed for providing the kids that got you in the door." Isabel's blood boiled. "You signed away your rights to Diego and Lucas. You have no claim to anything." "See, that's where you're wrong," Victor said, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper. "I kept copies of the unsigned papers. I may have signed away some rights, but as their biological connection, I still have claims, and I want compensation for my genetic contribution." "They're not your children," Isabel stood, fury giving her strength despite her pregnancy. "You walked away from them. You left us with nothing. And now you have everything," Victor sneered. $15 million should cover it, half of what your husband's worth. "Get out." "Make me," Victor said, moving closer, or better yet, tell your husband to pay up, unless he wants the world to know his perfect little wife was my piece on the side for 2 years. That's when Ethan's voice cut through the office like a blade. "The only thing the world's going to know," he said from the doorway, "is that you're about to be arrested for extortion and harassment." Victor spun around, and Isabel saw fear flicker in his eyes as he took in Ethan's imposing presence. Behind Ethan stood 2 security guards and what looked like a police officer. "Ethan," Isabel breathed in relief. "It's okay, mi amor," Ethan said, his eyes never leaving Victor. Mr. Gomez was just leaving. Permanently. This isn't over, Victor said, but his bravado was cracking. Yes, it is, Ethan replied calmly. Because those papers you're waving around? My lawyers have the filed originals. You signed away all rights 2 years ago and received financial compensation then. You have no legal claim to Diego and Lucas, and what you're attempting now is extortion. If you ever come near my wife or children again, you'll discover that I have resources and legal power you can't even imagine. As the police escorted Victor out, Ethan crossed to Isabel, gathering her in his arms. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? We're fine, Isabel said, though she was shaking. But Ethan, what if he tries? He won't, Ethan said firmly. I've already had restraining orders filed. He's done, Isabel. He can't hurt us anymore. That night, as they lay in bed with Diego and Lucas sleeping between them, both boys had insisted on staying close after the day's drama. Isabel marveled at her husband's strength. Thank you, she whispered in the darkness. For what? For protecting us, for choosing us over your mother, for making me feel safe. Ethan's hand found hers across their sleeping sons. Always, he said simply, in every storm, in every battle, I choose you. I choose us. Even when people try to tear us apart? Especially then, Ethan said, his voice fierce with love. Because what we have is worth fighting for. You're worth fighting for. As Isabel drifted off to sleep, surrounded by her family, she knew that whatever storms came next, they would weather them together. They were stronger than Eleanor's prejudice, stronger than Victor's greed, stronger than anything the world could throw at them, because they had something that couldn't be bought or broken. A love built on choice, strengthened by adversity, and multiplied by every new life they brought into their circle. Their kingdom would stand. Chapter 7. Life and Death and Love. At 32 weeks pregnant, Isabel felt as though she carried a small basketball that kicked relentlessly and rendered sleep impossible. Their daughter they'd recently discovered they were expecting a girl was active and robust, according to Dr. Rivera. Everything had progressed normally until the morning everything shifted. Isabel woke up to dampness between her legs and a cramping sensation that made her breath catch. At first, she thought it might be normal pregnancy discomfort. Dr. Rivera had warned her that the 3rd trimester would be uncomfortable, but when she tried to stand and felt liquid trickling down her thighs, panic set in. Ethan, she whispered, shaking his shoulder urgently. Ethan, wake up. He was instantly alert, sitting up and taking in her expression. What's wrong? I think my water broke, Isabel said, her voice tight with fear. But it's too early. She's not due for 8 more weeks. Ethan was out of bed and moving before Isabel finished speaking, grabbing his phone and clothes while helping her to the bathroom. Call Dr. Rivera, he instructed. Already dialing 911. Tell her we're coming in. The next hour passed in a blur of ambulance, sirens, worried voices, and medical equipment. Diego and Lucas were quickly dropped off with Carmen, their sleepy faces confused as Ethan kissed them goodbye with promises that Mommy and the baby would be okay.